2024 has been banger after banger, but who are the top reigning LRs? How's it everybody, Celtic Link here, we're back for another Dokkan Dattle video. In today's video, we are going to be attempting our 2024 LR tier list. That's right, we have not done an LR tier list in quite some time, but I think it's time to go ahead and give an update as we have approached the end of the year, and the next time we'll see an LR is at the 10th anniversary. So we're going to go ahead and hop on in here. Remember, our ranking criteria might be a little bit different than others, but this is the three things I look at for these tier lists. Number one, consistency. What is the unit's job and how well do they do that job? For example, if a unit is slot 1 unit, how well do they do that slot 1 unit, and do they have a little bit of flexibility with it? So the next thing we look at is versatility, right? Many units often are restricted to various specific setups or teams, but the ones that stand out are the ones that are versatile, the ones that have the ability to shift in and out of multiple teams and still perform as consistent as they would on their main team. And then finally, we look at power. I don't mean just offense, but this could apply to defense as well. If the unit is a proper defensive unit, how well do they tank? Is their tanking so great that it eclipses everything else? Or on the opposite end of the spectrum, are they so offensive that, you know, it doesn't really matter their defense because the enemy's probably dead afterwards? So these are the three things we look at here. So let's go ahead and let's start with our number 10. Now, I had a tough time picking the number 10 slot, especially when we look at the rankings I use for consistency, versatility, and power. There's a lot of units that could probably fit here in number 10, honestly, because they all are kind of in the same boat. They're not as versatile. The number 10 slot is not as versatile, but the units typically do what they need to do and have enough power to justify their placement on a team. However, right, again, for me, the 10 slot here falls short at versatility, and honestly, it's probably LR Jiren. You know, I had a toss up between LR Jiren and LR AGL Ultimate Gohan, honestly, and the reason being I ended up settling on Jiren is because, well, Jiren is good. He is one of the few units that can one-shot nearly Goku Frieza. He's very powerful even in the short Memorial Battle meta, and you know, he has an incredible standby that makes him pretty much invulnerable, and then of course once he comes out to full power, he is spectacular, right? He gets one big shot, clears nearly half the enemy's health in most cases if their SDR is probably killing the enemy straight out. It's really, really good. The only problem is he has no built-in additionals, right? Meaning you're only probably getting that one hit out of him. And two, he's pretty much restricted to a team that doesn't need him, right? He wants to be on teams like Universal Survival Saga, so he can get access to links and other things that make him useful, as well as additional support. However, the team that he's on is already filled by a bunch of other units, and so he's not very flexible, right? He's basically got two options for teams: TEQ UI's team and Topo's team. There are very few other places that he can be slotted into, just simply due to the nature of him being a Universe 11 Universal Survival Saga character. That said, right, in terms of, right, consistency, he is extremely consistent in what he does. His power is great. So he passes 2 out of our 3 categories. He just falls short in the versatility category, and that's why I placed Jiren at number 10. Now, number 9 was also a tough one, but I think 9 edges out simply due to having one of the best mechanics in the game. and that is the LR Gogeta. I know that sounds crazy, and a lot of people might not even consider him on the list currently, but at number 9, I feel like is an appropriate slot. For the first couple of turns, right, he gets enough defense due to his defense stacking, plus guard. He gets enough defense to get by for the first couple of turns, and then once he transforms on his, on turn 5 from first appearance, he then can get 70% chance to dodge, which is, decent enough. Now, the only problem once he dodges is, of course, he doesn't have any crit until he starts dodging, meaning you'd be pretty risky to put him slot 1, and you'd be better off putting him slot 2 or 3 for that first Gogeta Blue appearance. But once you circle back to the next turn, you now have one of the best protective mechanics in the game, and that is a target skill, and not just any target skill, one that is, unbeholden to a defense stat, right? His target skill being one of the best is that it gives him guaranteed dodge for the turn, meaning no attacks will land at all that turn, and then he's getting an additional critical hit for each of those dodges that he gets. And I feel like that's kind of why I put him here, because consistency. He's pretty consistent at getting to that point. In fights that are long enough that allow him to get to that point, he is extremely consistent in getting out a target skill, protecting your rotations, and getting the job done. He is probably one of the most versatile units in the game. There are so many different teams he can be slotted into. Super Saiyans, movie heroes, superheroes, fusions, Fused fighters. There are just so many different setups that he can be run on, that you honestly, if you have the extra slot, it would be remiss not to put him on the team, to be completely honest, especially if you know the fight's going to go on for a bit. So that is why I put Gogeta Blue at number 9, because he does fall short in the power category. His offense is probably not the greatest. In fact, his best turn is probably his target turn, and it can be one of the most powerful turns in the game, but it provides very specific setup, of course, support and all that good stuff, but it also requires him to have supered first and then take a super and then counter that super, right? Which doesn't always necessarily happen. So that's kind of why he falls short, because outside of that one singular turn, his power does kind of fall. So that is why Gogeta is at number 9. Moving on to number 8, I will, where is he? Here he is. LR Janemba. LR Janemba is actually really, really impressive. His EZA is probably one of the best LR EZAs we've had in quite some time. His EZA basically allows him, it fixes his main problem where he needed to build up in slot 2 or 3 before he can go slot 1. Now he can build up where the heck ever. I mean, he's still a little squishy in slot 1 to begin, but beyond that, he becomes near invincible. Plus, having another team protection mechanic like Gogeta, right? He does have that rage mode, which can cancel supers and help you in those few get out of dodge situations. So he does pass the bar for consistency, right? He does everything he needs to do and then some. He is also an extremely versatile villain unit, right? Being that he's so great and powerful that he can pretty much be slotted onto any team, and half the time he doesn't even need big bad bosses active to dish out a bit deal of damage. So he is he's pretty versatile in that sense. Now, where again he falls short, now this is pretty common amongst the amongst the bottom tier of this list, is the power. He's got good power, don't get me wrong, but you compare that to the amount of power coming out of both defensively and offensively of the units above him, I think he does kind of fall short. He's really good defensively, But, you know, stray supers in some of these harder fights can catch him, especially if it's pre-super and you're expecting that slot 1. Goku Frieza, he can struggle in. Of course, by that point, you do have the rage mode, but if you didn't, that STR phase could really hurt him, and then him being Fizz type means he's less likely to be able to deal damage back unless he gets a crit. Same is true for Bulma, although, you know, no damage mechanic there. So that's kind of why I put Janemba at number 8. Defensively, he's a monster, but offensively, he does kind of fall short. Moving on, our next set of rankings brings us to the number 7 slot. The number 7 slot I had a bit of a hard time with because I feel like, honestly, I feel like anywhere between 5 and 7 could just go on and on. Like that, you could probably make an argument for each one of these here. Let's see. So we'll just go with this one. So for number 7, we have TEQ UI Goku. All right, UI Goku is incredibly versatile. Any team where you can put a Goku or Universal Survival Saga character, or I mean, you know, any of his categories, Kamehameha, Goku's family, Pure Saiyans, any team he can go on, he's probably a good choice to put on. He's extremely versatile. His super attack effects provide support to the rest of the rotation. And I mean, once you get out his UI Mastered Ultra Instinct, he becomes incredibly powerful offensively, plus having a turn of guaranteed dodge, right? He has crits built into him there, and he has a dodge counter, which piles and piles and piles on the damage. So in terms of versatility and power, I definitely have to give it to TEQ UI Goku. Where he falls short is in consistency. His consistency for me is a bit of a problem, especially in base. And if it wasn't for the pace, I would put him so much higher if it wasn't for that. And honestly, I mean, he's frauded out on so much. I mean, for me, I might actually do this number and move UI Goku down. But, I mean, it is what it is. But we'll keep it here for now. So, again, his consistency in base, his dodge is much lower. He does have guard, which you would think helps, but it really doesn't. His guard can often still lead to him taking a bunch of damage, especially if he goes in slot 1, which is a strange thing because he does, right, his passive would indicate that he would want to be in slot 1, but it's actually pretty risky to put him there even with the guard. So that's kind of why I put him at number 7, because he does fall short in the consistency. All right, now when we start getting to, 6 and 5 here, that's where things get interesting, because honestly, like I said, between here, I could probably swap any one of these guys out and not argue about it at all. You could probably move any one of these guys around, but for number 6 for me, is probably the brand new TEQ LR Gotenks. Now, I want to put this guy higher. I really, really, really do. But again, he's got some similar problems to UI, right? In terms of versatility, he's pretty versatile. He only needs one other final trump card character on the team, which is incredibly easy to fulfill. If you run a double Gotenks, it's extremely easy to fulfill. If you run a Majin Buu Saga or Accelerated Battle or Fusions, right? He's got access to his best link partner, which is the TEQ Gogeta, which fulfills his condition. And there's tons of teams you can put any of these guys together and still make it work. So versatility definitely gets a plus there. In terms of raw power, he is one of the more powerful LRs we have gotten, both offensively and defensively for the first 5 turns, right? He basically is invulnerable for the first 5 turns, and he also has the mechanic where if he takes a super, he has a 50% chance of gaining an extra 777% defense. Now, in the early turns, if you get that, not so bad. You know, you probably are not going to see the difference, but in later parts in the fights, past turn 5, that 50% proc makes or breaks this unit. If that doesn't proc in a lot of cases, it could result in tossing the fight, which is why, like UI Goku, I kind of have to give him a ding in consistency, as much as I want to put him higher, because I do really like this unit. In terms of consistency, that's where he drops, but power and versatility, he's got it in spades. Which brings us to our number 5. Number 5, having a similar issue here, is the LR Trio. In terms of versatility, another unit that is completely versatile. If there's a team you can put them on, you can bet your butt you're putting them on there, due to the extra 77% defensive support that they are giving. It is like a mini Easy A, right? Like, that amount of defensive support really piles on to units, and it helps them survive when they otherwise might not be able to. It almost revived several units from last year that were starting to struggle in the 9th anniversary power creep, so we definitely got to give them that for versatility. Now, in terms of consistency, right? They are incredibly consistent in what they do, all right? They are slot 2 mostly. In some rare cases, you can move them to slot 1, but they are providing offensive support through their super attack effect, defensive support through their passive, and of course, they do have an incredibly powerful standby. The only problem is in their power. They do tend to lack some offensive power when compared to the rest of their team, and now that isn't such a big deal, because much of the rest of the teams they're on have the power in spades, but it starts to become an issue when that lack of power doesn't really excuse, right, the defense that they have, right? If at this point the unit is attacking with that, they should be a little bit more defensive. I feel like with having a super attack effect that requires them to get the most out of it, right, it is 2-turn support, so, I mean, if you were trying to get the most out of it, you would want to put them in slot 1, but they can't always go there, and sometimes these bigger supers, even post supers, could hit them hard. And that's mostly Gogeta turn 1. Post super can do a bit to these guys, and Bulma turn 2, and 50. I think they can still tank 50% Goku Frieza though, post super if they get a triple. So. But again, it's a bit risky, and so that's kind of why I feel like the trade-off isn't fully there, but it is, I mean, it's incredibly useful, and that's kind of why they do still rank above the others here, because that support that they provide is incredible. So, moving on. Now, here's where the list gets really hard to break down, because you notice we've got 1 unit per category for each one of these. Well, I mean, I had a really tough time breaking down 1 through 4 here because, to be completely honest, there's just so much here. So, starting with number 4, I think this is, yeah. So, I think for number 4, I think it's pretty safe to put both INT Blue Evolution Vegeta and AGL UI Goku. Both are incredibly powerful. They are probably some of the best aging EZAs we're going to see in some time. They are incredibly useful. They have a revive and like such a great mechanic. Vegeta's often can be a little more harder to activate, especially if you're running him as a floater, because he does need to take 5 hits. AGL UI, depending on the fight, can that 70% can be an issue for him. I've had lots of issues where in Goku Frieza, we just simply can't get it because we're not taking the damage unless somebody gets hit with a super pre-super in the first 2 phases. But you know, if you're getting to the dodge phase, the dodge cancel phase, and you don't have that procs, you know, that could be a problem for him. But for both of these, they, in terms of versatility, power, and consistency, they actually check all 3 boxes. They are good at what they do, right? Goku is a great revive unit. Vegeta is a great revive unit. Goku dodges, Vegeta tanks, provided he can, you know, get a couple hits in first. They are both versatile. They can slide into, they have no team restrictions. They can slide into any team that allows them to be run, and they both can hit incredible feats of power. Defensively, UI's defense is in his dodge. He becomes a, you know, he has 2 turns of a complete dodge, you know, 100% dodge where he can't be touched. Blue Evolution, same thing, but with damage reduction. And guard. So I mean, they check all 3 boxes, and I see no reason to put them, you know, any lower than 4 for that, right? Because, right, each of these units all kind of have, you know, one major flaw that makes them stick out. But once we start getting me on this, right, all the units kind of check all 3 boxes, just for different reasons, which brings us to our number 3. Our number 3 pick was actually kind of tough, but I think I'm doing this one. I think this is fair, honestly. So number 3 is INT Broly for me. Now, I know a lot of you are going to kind of, you know, a lot of you are going to be surprised by that pick, right? Because you're like, well, you know, he isn't very versatile. And here's the thing with that. For me, in this instance, I think I can forgive the versatility, right? He does want to be on uncontrollable power, but he really only needs, you know, he just needs to have that 1 turn where you can get it, so then you can proc his domain. After that, it's fair game, right? He's incredibly consistent in what he does. Once his domain is up, he is tanking just about everything in the game, including Goku Frieza's super during the with his domain up. He also has stunning. He also has a lot of things that help him in fights like Bulma and Janemba and Gogeta. So consistency-wise, I definitely got to give it to him once his domain is up. Power, incredibly powerful defensively with the domain. Offensively, you know, he gets 1 big attack, 23 million if you get the if you get the 24 key, but again, his power lies in his defense while that domain is up. Plus, he has a revive, which is always useful, and support. Again, the versatility is where he kind of falls short, but because of what his domain is doing for the full team, and that's kind of why I go over this, it brings the consistency up of the whole team. Right, the thing about running Broly's, the uncontrollable power team with the Broly, is that the entire team is boosted by his existence, right? While these guys are additions to their team, the rest of the Broly team functions 10 times better through him being on the team, to the point where he is a necessary run for the team, and that's kind of why I put him above them, even though he does fall short in consistency. Which brings us to our number 2 pick. Now, I'm sure a lot of people are not going to agree with this one, but I'm pretty confident in this placement. And that is the TEQ Gogeta. TEQ Gogeta is an incredibly powerful unit. He checks all 3 boxes: power, versatility, and consistency. But even though those 3 boxes are checked, right? Even though power-wise, once TEQ Gogeta comes out, it is one of the most powerful LRs in the game, at least on the superclass side of things, right? Bullies do got him beat. He's one of the most powerful LRs on the superclass side. Plus, he's near invulnerable and can nullify the enemy's unarmed super attacks. So he's got power in spades. Incredibly versatile, like UI Goku and Blue Evolution Vegeta and many of the other Saiyans on this list. If there's a team that can be slotted into, there's no reason not to put them there, right? They fit on so many teams. Like we said already, Pure Saiyans, Accelerated Battle, Otherworld Warriors, Fusions, Fused Fighters, Final Trump Card, Kamehameha, all of these top tier teams, Super Saiyans, all of these top tier teams benefit from his presence on the team. Consistency, while they are incredibly consistent, right, especially once Gogeta comes out, it's the base form that kind of falls a bit short, right? Base form can be incredibly squishy, even post-super, right? Gogeta and Janemba fights especially hurt this unit early on, to the point where you may not even see Gogeta come out in those fights. Just simply due to the nature of the fusion condition. Bulma and Goku Frieza, though, fodder to this guy, because you are able to consistently get out of Gogeta. So I do kind of give it to them for consistency. It's just that, like the trio, they are a bit squishy in slot 1, and even slot 2 post super in base form. Their base form can be a bit dangerous, but that, you know, this is pretty true for a lot of fusion units. The base forms always leaves a lot to be desired in exchange for an incredibly powerful fusion unit. Which brings us to the number 1 slot. Now, I feel like most people probably see where this is going. The number 1 slot, I had such a hard time deciding on one, because the reality is you have an argument for any one of the characters I'm about to place here, right? And those characters are the Carnival Broly, the Carnival Gohan, and LR Beast Gohan. There is an argument to be made for each one of these characters here. I really don't see another. I really don't see a placement for any of these guys other than number 1. Beast handles it for all 3 boxes, right? Consistency, versatility, and power. He will tank consistently. He will proc his target skill. He will hit back. You know, he can get upwards of 22 million if he takes a bunch of hits first. He's incredibly versatile, like all these other units, right? He doesn't have any special requirements other than a unit super with Piccolo, which isn't all that necessary for him. So if there's a team he can go on, then he's on it, right? Power, incredibly power offensively. Well, maybe not offensively now, but definitely defensively. He is still going to have that incredible defense and that target skill, which will age incredibly well. For the others, the TEQ Broly, same thing, consistent. Turn 1, invincible. Turn 2, gets his first stack, pretty much invincible for every fight in the game. Turn 3 and beyond, now his defense starts getting a little bit scarier, but the trade-off is his power shoots up wildly. He is greatly stacking that attack every turn, and it spins out of control very, very quickly, especially when you have other Brolys on the team. See, that's the thing about these Brolys, right? And that's kind of why I rank them so highly, including him. And like, honestly, I could even throw TEQ Broly and AGL Broly somewhere here, because really the thing with Broly, and this is what makes the 2 Brolys so high, is that the Broly team is basically pick your poison with Broly. Which flavor of Broly do you want to kill the boss with, right? And both TEQ and INT allow that to happen, right? Especially if you're running double INT, where you can keep the domain up for the majority of the fight. It's literally, which Broly do you want to kill the boss? And having a unit like TEQ Broly that allows you to kind of play with the rotations and move things around because of the way his base form works, where he's got that 90% reduction for turn 1, and then is pretty defensive, not incredibly, but enough that he's probably not going to get you killed unless he takes a super, that you can kind of just keep playing around until everything is set up the way you want, right? It's just the fact that he is what he is in his base form, I think, is what really sets him apart for me above other units. That turn 1 is so incredibly powerful for so many different teams, right? And he's not even as restricted as the other Brolys, which is why he's much higher, right? He could just go on to a team. He's got no restrictions, and that's the best thing about him. He checks all 3 boxes: consistency, versatility, and power. The only problem where his consistency would fall is in the final stages of fights like Bulma or Goku Frieza, where you're beyond his transformation boost, right? He gets 3 turns where he's a lot more defensive and can easily slot 1, but beyond that is when that changes. But at that point, you have you should, if you build the Broly team correctly, other options to go ahead and protect that slot 1 for him. So there is that. And then that brings us to the last unit we put up here, which was LR Family Kamehameha. Okay, these guys get their placement due to what happens turn 3. Obviously, right, turn 1 can be a bit of a problem, right? And that's kind of where the consistency falls for them. But it's not that bad, is that he is a slot 2 unit for that first appearance. That first appearance Gohan can proc 3 to 4 supers, which will make him defensive enough to tank most hits. If you're at a point where he shows up at that point and you're worried about the defense, well, he's got you covered because he also has dodge once you fall below the HP threshold. So, you know, on that regard, he's consistent. Beyond that, on the second appearance, he can now go into standby, where as long as you are on a full superclass rotation, he is pretty much invulnerable, provided you get the right orbs. Of course, he's not attacking because you are building up his standby. He has one, like the Z-Duo, he has one of the longest standby mechanics, and while you're in standby, you can he builds up charges much easier due to the amount of orb changing that is occurring on the team around him. And so he is easily able to build up, especially if you're running the trio as lead. He's easily able to build up over 100 charges very, very quickly, which after 100 charges, you are more than likely guaranteed to kill the enemy, which brings to power. He has probably the most amount of power, both defensively and offensively, of any LR. And then again, with versatility, every unit in this top is extremely versatile. There's no team where he can't be run on, except maybe teams that are high in extreme class, which you're probably not running if you're running him anyways. So to me, that's a non-issue. So all 3 of these check all 3 boxes, and there's really an argument to be made for any one of the 3. I could see Gohan moving down to maybe number 2 if you're not a fan of those type of standbys, but the simple fact that he will consistently get a second appearance in vulnerable state is kind of what does it for me. Whether you like like to utilize the actual finish skill or not, the actual standby position is what gets it for me. So I know that is a lot, and I know this may not be the best list, and I know not everybody may agree with my list. After all, this is just my list. This is just my opinion. If you like it or you have some thoughts, please drop them in the comments down below. Feel free to drop your list in the comments and let us know what you think of the top LRs. Now that we have a definitive list for 2024, like with the TORs, we can go and make our adjustments as new characters come out. Now that I have the official list, and I will keep this running. So I will note that just because a new unit from this year is not up here on the list does not mean they're bad, right? Every unit on here has a slot on their teams, except maybe this fraud, right? He got hard replaced by the TEQ UI Goku. But everyone else, right, depending on the team you're running, has a slot. Even these guys, right? They all have slots on their team, and they all perform their functions well. It's just that if we are trying to place a top 10, there's probably no argument about these guys. Well, maybe move these guys off. They're just there for my argument about the Broly team. But guys, if you like the video, make sure you hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel if you have not already. And in the comments down below, let us know, what would your list look like? Do you agree with my list? Do you disagree with it? Again, this is purely my opinion based on the criteria I laid out for you here. If you like the video, hit that like button. And if nothing else, guys, thanks for watching, and aloha.